Welcome back to another episode of the Kings Pulse podcast presented by the Kings Herald. My name is Brendan Nunez, and we got a trade reaction today. I have Mark Schindler joining me, who does a whole lot of things, including covering the Indiana Pacers. You just put out something on the Sacramento Kings today, which is fitting. Anybody unaware, at M. Schindler NBA, basketball news, Fear the Sword, Indy Cornrows. What is going on, Mark? How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm really happy that I got that article out this morning when I did. I wish I'd gotten it out like a day or two earlier because that was I was not ready for we were talking about before we got in here. I was not ready for that to happen today. I was hoping, I was like, it's a Tuesday morning. I don't think the Kings will make a move today. I made the mistake of tweeting out, I hope the Kings don't make a move today. And then they made a move about 45 minutes after I had dropped that article. So it's that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But I'm psyched to dive into this with you, man. I'm glad you invited me on.
Yeah, always appreciate you coming on, man. Always great to get your insight. And the deal we're talking about, anybody somehow unaware, this holy shit of a deal. Domantas Sabonis is coming to Sacramento along with Jeremey Lamb and Justin Holiday and a 2027 second round pick from Indiana for Tyrese Haliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson. Whoa.
Yeah,
I mean, just first reaction, I guess, like to seeing this for me. I mean, I put out an episode yesterday where, I was like, I'm at the point where I think I could see anybody not named Tyrese Haliburton moved, and I don't know exactly how shocked I would be. And wow, yeah, Woj was talking about Tyrese was a guy that really wanted to be somebody that was going to change the culture in Sacramento. We just talked to him at practice yesterday, and they gave us him and Davion specifically to be talking to about the Rising Stars game that they were about to be in. I think that Tyrese was part of the future. Like, I don't think this was planned. I think that Sacramento really needs to make a move. He's their most valuable asset. And yeah, I mean, getting Sabonis back is certainly not nothing. But I guess first reaction from my point of view is, holy crap, they really moved on from Haliburton. And it was a little hard to, look past that at first. From your point of view with Indiana's perspective, is it kind of the same of like, wow, they really got Haliburton?
yeah. I think my immediate thought was, yeah, that. Wow, Halliburton, because I think every talk that had been mentioned beforehand was stuff centered around Fox. So for Halliburton to be traded, I was pretty shocked by that. Um, I just also was not under the impression that Domas was going to be moved. I know that he'd been in trade talks. I just didn't think anybody was going to actually put together the kind of trade package to make it happen. And the Kings did. I think in terms of value, like that's about as good as they could have asked for, honestly. Um, as for the Kings, though, I think my immediate reaction to it was that this is very clear that I don't want to say that Monty McNair is on the hot seat or anything like that, but I think this move is like very clear. Like, because I wrote about what I wrote about this morning was like, I don't think that they should separate Fox and Halliburton because that had seemed to be where it was trending, and it happened today. Obviously, in the way that I think you and I both, didn't anticipate it. But I will say I'm probably more in the middle on this than most people. Like I really like Hallie. I think he's going to be an incredible player. I do not want to be the team that has to move on from him. But I also think to a degree how good Sabonis is and the impact he could have has been undersold to a degree. Um, and I think it's just tough because, this like you just have to look at this with the lens that Monty McNair is probably not getting another season of not being in the playoffs. Like as much as I think that's also a product of, his bad last offseason, like because that last offseason was bad, frankly, and we've seen what that has done for the product on court. But this is also because of everything that's happened. Like I'm not trying to keep plugging the piece over and over again, but like, I mean, you really can't talk about the Kings without all of the 15 prior years of everything that's built up to this. And it's just, I do think this gives an actual opportunity um, to maybe try and break that cycle. But I don't know, man. It was a little bit head scratching for me from both ways. The last thing I'll say on Indiana before we move on is like I think this just means that it's a very clear rebuild now after the trade with Karras 2 days ago. That was I thought I was pretty certain Karras was going to get moved. He really hasn't fit in. He's been pretty ready to move somewhere else. And that was more about, you get some value and see what happens. But then you make that move with the best player on your team being shipped out. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear Indiana's going in for a full rebuild now.
Yeah, I want to spend a little bit of time with you talking about how good of a player Sabonis really is, because I think that is, like you mentioned, kind of being not talked about enough here, because I mean, I think that the fan base did have such a connection to Haliburton already, which is pretty crazy. And it's also funny that his last game as a member of the Kings, he had 17 assists. Yeah, I mean, Haliburton has a ceiling that I don't even know exactly where to place with what we've seen recently. But Domantas Sabonis is 25 years old, making $18.5 million this year. Next season, he makes $18.5 million. The year after, he makes $19.4 million. So the Kings will have him throughout the rest of this season and 2 more years as well. Again, he's only 25 years old. And this year, in 47 games he's played, he's averaging 18.9 points, 12.1 rebounds, 4th in the entire league in rebounds, where the Kings have sucked, by the way. 5.0 assists. The Kings early in the year tried to play out of the short roll a lot, or not out of the short roll, out of the guys on the elbow, and do a lot of cutting actions and things like this, and have never had a passing big that actually worked with that scheme, and Gentry kind of went away from it, but Sabonis is obviously phenomenal there. Like, I think it's, like you said, it's easy to overlook how good of a player Sacramento is getting back in this deal, because I think some of the emotional attachment to Haliburton. But yeah, can you just kind of share your perspective of just how good Sabonis is?
I mean, this has been the best season of his career. I think that you can look, I mean, like the numbers were obviously popping last year, but I think he's gotten better defensively this year, which we'll talk about for sure. In terms of his handle tightening up a little bit more, like a lot of his averages look down just because of the beginning of the year, they really weren't using him as a playmaking hub anymore. They were just kind of putting him in the dunker, or, they were even playing 5 out with him quite often. And it was like, okay, well, he's clearly not a spacer. I think that's something he's tried to evolve in his game. His jumper hasn't really been there for him this year, but it almost doesn't matter to a degree because he's so capable of impacting the game in other ways. Like, I think the biggest thing that I just try and dispel too is that he's somebody who he's just a post up dominant big, blah, 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 blah. Like, he certainly utilizes the post, but I think, this is not meant as a slight at Julius Randle. He's definitely had a tough year this year, but he was rightfully all NBA last year. Like, I think people look at Domas and think that they're viewing Julius Randle. Like, when they talk about him, like, Domas is not somebody who holds the ball for a really long time. If he holds the ball, it's because an action stalled out, and it's not necessarily because he's trying to just hold the ball for no purpose. A lot of touch passes, a lot of helping the offense flow, which I actually think is something that could be really good for Sacramento's offense. I do start to have questions though, just in terms of what the rest of the roster looks like around it. But I know I'm getting ahead of myself on that. But
I think that we're. Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I think that they're so far from being done.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine Rashawn's going to get moved.
Rashawn is the obvious one to me. I think Bagley, even going into this, it was I would be shocked if Bagley was stuck around. Yeah, right. That's a good point, especially with Indiana going rebuild, right? Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't want to spend too much time on it because it'll probably get outdated pretty quick. Like, who knows what's going to happen with the rest of this roster? Rashawn Holmes probably gets moved, like you mentioned. I think Marvin Bagley's the other obvious one. I'm not even 100% that I'm going to talk about the fit with De'Aaron Fox, but almost wonder if there could be something there. Who knows at this point, right? Like, if you're willing to move on from Haliburton, this is it very clearly just backs up everything we've heard of. Everybody is on the table. So who knows where they go from here? There is still like a lopsidedness to this roster. But when you think of the weaknesses that we've seen throughout this year, of rebounding and ball movement being 2 of the big 3, with the other just being sadly kind of everything on the defensive end of the ball, that Sabonis is a major check in those 2 first boxes of rebounding and playmaking. So I mean, I think that it is going to be very interesting to see how he is able to play and kind of work around this roster. I guess let's talk about the defense a little bit. You were saying that there's been some growth from him this year. What does that look like, and where do his strengths and weaknesses lie on the defensive side?
Yeah, I think what's really tough for me, I mean, I don't mean this to sound like asinine or anything, but I think sometimes people just like, I don't want to say they don't understand defense, but defense is like a lot more nuanced than I think I realized when I first came into covering the NBA. I used to think Domas was like just this terrible defender, like, oh, he can't do the things Miles Turner does. I'm like, well, number one, Miles Turner, when he's healthy and when he's right, is one of the 5 best rim protectors in the NBA. So that plays a part, but also like, just because he's limited doesn't mean that he's bad. Like, he's not somebody you can put in a drop and just get you a top 10 defense. And I think we've also just seen more and more like it's very hard for anybody to do that in the NBA, the way the offense has gone. But he's really excelled at working in hedges and like going out and timing hedges, angling correctly. His hands are really active on the perimeter. Like, I think he's at a career high in steals this year. If he's not, he was close to it. He's just really improved those facets of the game. I think his positioning's gotten a lot better. Like you mentioned with the rebounding, like Indiana's had rebounding problems the last couple of years, but it's mostly because their guards and wings are very poor rebounders. Like it always gets pinned on the bigs, but it's mostly been because of the guards. But also, like, I mean, just converting that into the break. Like, we've seen probably a little bit less this year than last year, but Domas brings the ball up in transition a lot, which is really awesome and exciting for, like, it sounds very small and minute when you look at it, but it can really change how a defense is coming out and guarding you when a set starts, and it just makes things a little bit more interesting that way.
Or for a team with De'Aaron Fox that's constantly talking about transition play, if he doesn't have to go and get the ball, he just gets to take off from the perimeter already, and Sabonis got those outlet passes.
I'll say too, like he really is. I wouldn't say that he's not a rim protector. Like, he does protect the rim better than I think people give him credit for. Like, he's not going to block a lot of shots, but he'll alter shots, which is all you can really ask for from people. Also, wow, Bradley Beal just underwent season-ending surgery on his wrist.
Wow.
Per Shams and Woj. Sorry, I didn't mean to break that in the middle, but
no, you're good.
That's wild.
Wow.
Hope he's okay, but I mean, like, he's good at getting vertical around the rim. Like, again, he doesn't have a great wingspan or anything, but he's capable of just being in the right place at the right time. And even if that's not always going to be the same impact, like, I would just, looking through the Kings roster, like, he's probably the best big defender other than Rashawn Holmes on the roster, which is not saying a lot, but like, just to note, like, he's definitely an upgrade over Chimezie Metu. Like, Metu is, as much as I enjoy watching Chimezie try and figure things out, he's not there yet. Like, I do think that, I think a lot of people with this be like, oh, the defense is going to fall apart. And I'm not there. Like, I do think that you can at least have an average to slightly above defense with Domas, and they've done that before in Indiana. So,
yeah. And do you feel strongly about him being either a 4 or a 5?
I really think he's more of a 5.
And that has
like,
to do
I guess
with the
in a lot of
defense, I
ways,
would guess.
yeah, on defense, he's a 5 to me. And even offensively, like, he can do some 4 things, but like, to me, he's more of a 5, and that's fine. I think it's just like we've seen with Minnesota. I think I'm just interested to see how they try and retool the roster, because that is, I mean, as much as they've already made moves now, they have to do a lot of retooling to make this make more sense to me. Headed into the offseason, because I want to see that, like, if they're going to be a little bit more of the team that I think that they can be, it's probably going to be trying to find more rangy wings and forwards, which I guess, I know you've been asking for a long time, but
they really need that floor stretching 4, especially.
Yeah. Or just, somebody who can play both ends without killing you would be fantastic, because there's only like 3 of those guys on the roster right now. So
PJ Washington.
That would be
the one that makes sense to me. A PJ Washington, Kai Jones kind of thing for Rashawn.
That would be amazing, actually. I would love that. I'm not a Pacers fan, but I very much so hope that they trade Miles for PJ Washington, because that would be I love PJ Washington. He's so good. Same thing with Domas. Like, I don't think people realize enough how good he is, but so I'm getting off track.
No, you're fine. It's a hectic time of year, hectic day, especially. To continue with Domas a little bit, his pairing with De'Aaron Fox. What do you think of it? I know we just talked about, you would need other spacers alongside them. I think that's the same issue we've seen with Rashawn, that they need three other shooters out there, and we haven't seen that happen. But I guess like starting with their pick and roll, how do you think that sort of, in your mind, how do they work when it comes to their synergy? Both guys that probably prefer to get to the basket, when I think ideally in a pick and roll you have one that is more comfortable outside, one that prefers to be inside. But yeah, I mean, Fox has never been able to be a cutter off a passer like this. I don't think Sabonis has played with somebody that I think has cutting potential like Fox. Yeah, what do you think of kind of their two-man game potential?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to an extent about wanting somebody who could space out to three with De'Aaron, but part of what I find really exciting about this is that I think we're gonna really see for the first time De'Aaron's speed get utilized since the Dave Yeager era. Like, I mean, they utilized it in transition. That was about it because the half court offense wasn't very good. But um, like even then, we started to see a little bit more of it after Alvin Gentry took over and De'Aaron got moved to being more of a primary scorer than primary playmaker. Like we started to see some more corner actions and stuff just to use his speed getting downhill, or even like they would set up in I'm trying to remember what it is. It was like they would set up for like a double, like the like a stagger handoff, but then send somebody on a 45 cut, and then De'Aaron would do like a chase action, like doing stuff like that, just because he's so quick and he can beat his defender one on one with that without even having to do anything. Like there's a lot of stuff I can envision with that in terms of just what his speed is. That I'm going to probably write about tonight, so I'm excited about that. I'm very interested in that. As for getting downhill and pick and roll, that is like that's been the hardest part with De'Aaron this year. Like he literally has regressed as a passer, and I don't know entirely what to make of that. I think part of that was it. I mean, he low key just kind of played like he was frustrated playing for Luke Walton for most of the beginning of the year. If we're being honest.
Yeah, I think the reporting that we saw recently, this was James Ham, was, came into the year frustrated because Buddy and Bagley were still on the team, two guys that had reported that they wanted out. And, the idea is there's this continuity and coming into this year with keeping Walton around, and there's supposed to be a good, lack of a better word, vibe going into this year that they can kind of build upon. Yet we're still sitting here with two guys that are ball stoppers that do not want to be here. So I think that that's partially a factor here.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I do think I think people have been a little bit too down on Fox this year. I feel like sometimes I sound too much like I'm trying to keep up with maintaining the right narrative, but like I still think, especially once once he moved off ball more or less, not it wasn't like I mean his usage was the same, but less about playmaking, more about scoring. I think you really saw a shift and he looked a lot better. Um, I just am so interested to see what this looks like for him because I mean Domas is the best playmaker he's played with. Like I think Domas is a little bit ahead of where Hallie is just because of what he can do all across the floor, not just from the perimeter. Um, like okay, what do Fox's reads look like just getting downhill? Can that improve? Like in terms of just seeing things. If Domas is playing out of the dunker spot or playing more at the elbows, like what does that look like? Um, I think even though we like to it tends to be like, okay, well, spacing is 5 out. You can sometimes your best spacing might come playing 4 out, 1 in, or something like that. So it really is just going to depend. But Alvin Gentry is really creative. I think something that I mean that's an entirely different part too, because like is Alvin actually going to be hired? Like I know there have been talks about that. Like he wants to be given an actual commitment. I don't know if it's going to happen. Like I wrote about that today. I was like, whatever it is, they just have to actually give a commitment to someone because that's the biggest issue with the Kings consistently is we'll pay somebody to do it, but we're not going to actually commit to it. And so for better or for worse, like I feel like actually committing to Domas is a good thing. Like and again, that's another thing we can talk on. But just in terms of actually getting things going downhill and opening things up for De'Aaron, I think you kind of merge De'Aaron, who's a guy who has primary capabilities, like his burst, his speed, that is shit that you can't replicate. But he of course has some vision issues that can pop up. Obviously he's not a shooter, but like I just to a degree, like I think adding Domas's playmaking and what he can do as a connector, I think could really buffer a lot of that over. But it's I don't. I mean, I want to go back and watch some more stuff too, but I think ultimately it's going to be. I think it'll be a better fit than people are maybe thinking.
Yeah, definitely going to be a lot of film probably in both of our futures these next couple
Yeah.
days. Um, is Sabonis a guy that like you see as an offensive hub that you're running the offense through a majority of the time? I mean, feels like a pretty basic question, but is
Wait,
it
sorry,
just
can you
as
repeat that?
you think of him as the like offensive hub that you're running the offense through pretty much most possessions while he's out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be every possession. Like, you can obviously use him as a decoy and stuff. Like, I actually think he's shown, like, he's pretty capable of playing out of the dunker spot. Like, he's good at floating in the paint and, just in whatever area is given to him. He's obviously an incredible rebounder. Like, I don't think that he necessarily has to have every single little thing run through him. And even then, like, okay, it's not necessarily a bad thing to just have somebody who you use as a lot for a lot of touch passes. Because if you don't have somebody who is making, like if you don't have a primary lead guard or ball handler who is making primary reads for you, like doing stuff like being able to really manipulate and warp the defense. Okay, well, you have to find counters to make that happen. Adding in somebody who, in spite of some maybe physical limitations to actually bend a defense with the passing on top of that, you can kind of mitigate it. So I do think like, yeah, a lot of it should be, in my opinion, running stuff through him. And like, um,
Yeah.
just mentioning Alvin again, like he was there for Zion's rookie year. And obviously Zion and Domas are completely different players. So don't like I'm not trying to conflate them, but I really did like how he started to you know, use Zion's gravity in the corners and in the elbows along with JJ Redick when he was there and just trying to, get the most out of two gravities in tandem to really bend the defense. So I do think like he's somebody who's certainly intuitive enough and smart, and as he's been around for forever and will know how to utilize them. So
Yeah, and I think that having a short roll passer that's like one of my aspects of the game that I think is underappreciated, and one of the things that just really gets me going is short roll passes and making the right reads from there. And I mean, obviously Sabonis comes in as the guy that far and away does that best out of anybody, any one of these Sacramento bigs. Like there were a couple moments that Len had this year, even like progress there, where I'm like, man, that is so nice to have. And Sabonis just does that ridiculously better. So, being able to read the way that the defense is moving, and if you're kicking to Harrison Barnes on the weak side in the corner from those sort of looks, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. The pairing when it comes to Fox and Sabonis, if that is what they end up moving forward with, kind of as expected, is going to be interesting to see how they grow together, how they learn to optimize each other, and the time that Sabonis spent in Indiana. What do you feel like was and was not done well when it came to optimizing his skill set?
that's a good question. I felt last year, I mean, the defense really was suboptimal for him. Like, a lot got poked at him for his defense being bad, but also like he just was asked to do way too much. Like I think there's been a good happy medium this year in terms of trying to, have him be more of somebody who like, I think, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. A lot of times people watch the Pacers defense be like, well, why are they going out and hedging ball screens instead of just playing in drop or center field or something? And they point at the bigs and like, oh, well, this is because they can't play defense around Sabonis. They have no perimeter defenders. Like their perimeter defense has been abysmal all year. And like, I mean, even with Miles, they were going out and hedging routinely and trapping because they can't get stops on the perimeter. So I think again, like Domas has gotten better at that. But last year they were doing way more of it. It was too much. It was asking like way, way too much. They were having him pressure like Ben Simmons and Russell Westbrook all the way out to the top of the key, like stuff like that. That's just like, what are we doing here? I didn't even play very high level ball, and I can tell you this is ridiculous. So um, I think that has been interesting in seeing how that's done, and I'm hoping that it's better in Sacramento. As for offense,
Yeah, Tyrese Haliburton's a pretty good defender, so they should work well together.
yeah. Well, this year, as for the offense, it was weird because I actually like you could definitely argue that last year I think a little bit too much went through Domas, but um, it wasn't also bad either. Like I don't think it was terrible. I think that there were maybe a lot of the moments where it looked bad were because they game plan. Like they literally had a game. Like one of the games they played against Utah, they just threw the ball in the post to Gobert. I mean, to go one-on-one against Gobert multiple times. And it was like, why are we doing this? This is clearly not going to work. As good of a scorer and interior player as Domas is, like, no, that's Rudy Gobert. Like, you can't just go in and play against him like that. This year they started off like playing him more, like they were putting him in the corner a lot, which is questionable. I mean, he's had moments of hitting shots. He's been really streaky this year of hitting from outside. Sometimes like there are ways where he can draw a defender if he's in the corner, but for the most part, you're not really getting the most out of him by spacing him beyond the arc. Like, you're going to get more out of how a defense is going to guard him if you put him at the elbow, or if you put him, at the elbow. Like, it's just just finding the right ways to actually saying, like, you can't really just space somebody. Like, I think that's just one of my like random little qualms that I have with the NBA. Like, you can't just space. Like, a defense guards you and gives you space, or doesn't give you space. So sorry, I'm like rambling, but yeah, I think they finally found a happy medium with that earlier this year, but it just depends.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, Sacramento still has so much room, and weirdly, I don't think they're assets that are blowing teams away or anything, but they still have a lot of ways to build around this duo. And if they want to have Fox there as part of that duo, I mean, I would assume he would be. It's just at this point, I'm like, I have no clue what's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, Harrison Barnes is going to have value. Rashawn Holmes is going to have value. Marvin Bagley still. And yeah, I think even Alex Len, like, they have their first round picks. I don't think that like still getting Jeremy Grant is out of the picture. We talked about PJ Washington. So there's definitely still ways to optimize this duo moving forward. And one of the other, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about some of the other guys that are coming over in this deal as well. The one that stands out to me more so is, well, first of all, there's 2 Jeremy Lambs apparently, according to Woj. Yeah. Which was very confusing at first, because I was like, man, what does he actually mean here? I guess we'll start
that we didn't know about, yeah.
Right. I guess we'll start with Jeremy Lamb, who has had an interesting career. I think, a lot of potential 12th pick in 2012, and just kind of dealt with a lot of injuries. And throughout this year, he's played 39 games, 15 minutes a night. And yeah, I mean, nothing that's blowing you away. 7 points, 2.5 boards, 33% from threes, a 34% three-point shooter throughout his career, and has had some years where he's doing notably better than others. He is still 29 years old, 6'5". Is he anything more than kind of a little bit of a throw-in to you here?
I mean, at the expense of sounding rude, like, if this wasn't the Kings, I would say it's more of just a throw-in, but like, I actually think he'll play solid rotation minutes for them. Like, I mean, especially with Terrence Davis going down, like, I still have, issues with Terrence, but like, he was playing really well before he had the wrist injury. I mean, Jeremy will probably play like first wing off the bench. I feel like, I mean, he's like the only real true wing on the roster. Like, I'll just say right away, he's not a good defender. Like, he is a very poor defender. He can get some stuff in passing lanes, because I think he's 6'5", but he has like a 7'1" or 7'2" wingspan, which just is ridiculous. And you can tell watching him, like, his arms go on forever. And he can have some okay moments and help, but for the most part, he ball watches a lot. He really struggles at the point of attack, especially after injuring his knee. But offensively, like, he's had some moments, especially even like out of pick and roll. Like, he's had some really good moments, and has carried the Pacers bench at times this year for like small stretches, not for like, he's not going to be the sixth man or anything, but he does enough offensively. And if his shot is going, which I think with more playing time, it will, I do think he'll actually be at least a solid player for Sacramento. So I'm pretty into him there. I remember, like, I think you and I had actually talked about him earlier this year. It might not have been on the pod, but just in general about, like, how he could actually be a part of Sacramento if there was some kind of salary dump or something. So I do think that he'll actually play a small part for the Kings this year.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with TD not there. Depending on what moves we end up seeing. I mean, right now it's Fox, Davion as your guards. Then you're working with Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, Terrence Davis isn't there, and then if you want to throw in Jamias Ramsey as your other smaller wing guards, then yeah, Harrison Barnes, and then you go to forwards pretty much. So It's definitely going to be interesting. I think Lamb's going to get some opportunity. What do you make of his 3-point shooting? It seems kind of streaky.
Yeah, it just depends. Like I think there have been moments where it looks really good. I think he's like around a league average shooter, but it helps too because he's not somebody who's just going to check out of shots all the time. So that helps. Like he's a willing and confident shooter. But honestly, he's almost better when he gets into the lane. Like it feels like he's definitely missed more of them this year. Because he's had a little bit of an up and down offensive season, but he's really good creating off the dribble and getting to his shot, from like 10 to 14 feet. Um, like he can I wouldn't call him an instant offense guy, but he's definitely somebody you can count on to shoot and drive. And that matters because there are not a lot of players on the Kings who can do that. So I mean, it's an upgrade over playing Mo Harkless. No offense to Mo Harkless, yeah. Especially Mo Harkless just had his first double in like 3 years last night or the night before.
Yeah, career.
So
night.
I can't slander Mo, but exactly. That's what you're working with. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely like what Mo brings defensively, but it's just, so limited options when it comes to wings and forwards for Sacramento. So Lamb will be interesting, I think. Yeah, especially with TD down, he should get an opportunity. And then Justin Holiday, who has his own interesting asterisks attached to him. My understanding, is that his vaccination status is, I'll go with questionable. I don't know where you're at.
Like he's not vaccinated.
Okay.
I don't understand it personally. I'm not trying to say that he's like a bad guy for it or anything, but like it's just so weird because his brother Drew is like one of the biggest vaccine advocates in the NBA, and Justin's anti-vax. So I don't personally get it. Justin is a really nice guy. I'm not trying to like hype him up just because he's a nice guy. Like I still think he should be going out and getting vaxxed, but it does not seem like he's going to. He was pretty open about not wanting to. As far as actual on-court fit, like
I'll say real quick, because I saw people throwing it around on Twitter. He'll still play home games in Sacramento. The Kings have at least one other player that's unvaccinated that's still playing. It's not a situation like Brooklyn or Golden State or anything like that. So he'll still play on at home games for Sacramento. And with you, I'm all for him getting vaccinated. It's interesting situation there. I hesitated because I hadn't confirmed from just Twitter things, so I'm glad you're in the loop there.
No, yeah, you're good. As for just actual on-court fit though, I thought it was great for the Kings that they got him. He's had a little saying it, he hasn't had a rough year. Like he had some difficult shooting earlier in the year, and his defense has been a step slower for the most part. I do attribute part of that to just the Pacers sucking this year. Honestly, like that has definitely played a part. But his 2-man game with Domas, especially over the last month and a half, is going to be already like the best form of offense that Sacramento's had in a minute. Like they're very good. I'm trying to think, just looking up and down the Kings roster. Obviously it hurts losing Buddy, but I think on aggregate, like Justin's probably a little bit better of a player right now, or maybe not even necessarily a better player, but you're not going to have to worry about him defensively. I actually think he'll be a plus. And he's capable of doing some of the same stuff, the off movement. He's not quite as good coming off Spain actions like Buddy is. And as much as that's a big part of the Kings offense, but he's very good working corner actions, coming off of pin downs. Really good movement shooter. I think he's taking like his highest 3-point attempt rate of his career right now. I think he's shooting like around
6.9 per game.
Very nice. And I think he's hit like over 40% of his threes over the last month. Like he's been absolutely on fire. So I do like, especially bringing in Domas and having Justin alongside him, you get some instant chemistry already while you're trying to figure out other stuff.
And he's got one more year after this on $6.3 million. We'll get to Buddy here in a second, but I think replacing that spacing is really important for Sacramento, especially when you're also losing Tyrese in this deal. Tyrese, Buddy, and Harrison are the 3 actual good 3-point shooters on this team. They're all elite, actually, I would say. Losing those, and then you fall down to, Harrison's still here, but like Davion has been sketchy, even though it's been improved as of late. If you want to talk about like Bagley, Metu, we mentioned Harkless, like it gets suspect when it comes to 3-point shooting pretty quick. So I think getting Justin Holiday back here as a filler in that buddy role. And yeah, I mean, a guy that's willing and confident to take those amount of threes, while also, I mean, there's, the talk we always hear is when you get traded that, well, it just means that a different team wanted you, right? Is the way that it gets. I think players try to look at it through an optimistic lens. And I think that if there's a slight feeling of that for Justin Holiday compared to what was being dealt with Buddy Hield, who very clearly wanted out of Sacramento, and I think was doing a lot of ill-advised things on the court, sometimes maybe out of spite.
Were disgusting, man. Like he's been playing some absolutely horrific basketball. Not great.
To the point where there's almost even some flat out like addition by subtraction, which is crazy. And yeah, it's not getting talked about much that he's involved in this deal. I understand why. I mean, it's Haliburton and Sabonis as the headliners here, but it's really funny to me that Buddy after this year has 2 years, $39 million remaining, and Sabonis has 2 years, $38 million remaining.
Yeah, it is kind of hilarious. It's funny. Like I mean, Buddy's contract.
Oh, I forgot you're kind of a Buddy guy, though.
I know you and Brian always get on me about this. I don't think his contract's ever been as bad as people make it out to be. At least like not now, especially with the I can't remember who just reported that the contract bump that's coming. I mean, CBA bump that's coming soon. But like it's like, I mean, he gets paid starters money. Like I do think he does some things that are valuable, just not for this Kings team, man. Like
no, in the right place, he can be okay.
Yeah, in the right place, I think he's a very valuable player. But I mean, Sacramento, man, like with the issues that team has, like no way, man. I was so out on that after a while, and clearly he was too. So yeah,
definitely. And Tristan Thompson thrown in there as well, who probably even or maybe gets bought out. He's just
I don't think he'll play for the
salary match in here. Yeah, and 2027 second round pick from Indiana. Man, this is quite the trade, and I understand the emotional aspect of holy shit, they traded Tyrese from Sacramento's point of view as being a majority of the fan base's initial reaction. I mean, that's where I was at too. Sabonis is the first name mentioned in that tweet, and yet I still got caught up on the fact that Tyrese was involved because I think it was just so shocking.
Yeah.
But I think that when we're kind of able to get past the initial shock of that, which maybe I'm at this point, I guess, Sabonis is a really, really good player. And do you think there's even more upside for Sabonis? I mean, he's 25 years old, which is crazy. He's 25.
I mean, I feel like I'm probably biased because I watch every single one of his games, but I do think so. Like, I mean, he's gotten better every year that he's been in Indiana, and I don't think that can be undersold. I know a lot has been made out of, Tyrese has been on an outlier development curve for a couple of years now, and I do think that's really fair, but I also I mean, I do get caught up because I still think even in watching the Kings this year, he has real limitations as somebody who I think you're building an offense around. So I'm interested to see what that looks like. Obviously, I mean, same thing with Domas, but I think that's to me, like I view them on a similar playing field. I don't necessarily think one's, cool. Like, I mean, Domas is definitely the better player right now. I do think that there's a chance that he could vault himself into a higher status because, like I mentioned, I mean, his defense has gotten better. I think the biggest thing for him is just his jumper. Like, I don't care about the three as much. It's more about like, can he make people respect him out to 15 or 16 feet? Like, if he can be an outlet shooter from the elbows or somewhere around there, because he really had that 2 years ago, and his shot has just been very off compared to where he was, earlier in his career with Indiana. And I haven't really known what to make of that. I'm pulling up the numbers right now and cleaning the glass because I know it's like the disparagement in between is kind of insane. Yeah, 2 years ago in 1920, when Nate McMillan was still head coach, shot 46% from 14 feet to the arc, which is really good. Obviously, like not a shot you want to take all the time, but like he shot it well. And since then, he shot about 30% from there. Like he's taken way less of them, to be fair. But I do wonder if his one, like trying to extend out to the arc has kind of impacted his ability to maybe it's impacted his touch from that area. I don't know. Like there's something there, but I mean, he really does have more that I think he could even expand into as a scorer. Like especially like his handles tightened up more. He's more capable of taking people up off the balance and facing up. Um, I definitely would not be out on the idea of Domas developing even a little bit more.
Do you have any insight on him as like a leader and kind of off court or more so behind the scenes, I guess, aspects of his interactions with teammates or anything like that? I know it's kind of hard, but
No, you're good. I mean, as far as stuff that I can say, like I mean, I don't know of any issues that he's really had with any guys. Like I know there have been some definite on-court issues between him and other people. But I mean, that's been kind of the story of the Pacers for the last year and a half. Like he and Karis LeVert clashed on court a ton. Him and Miles have clashed on court quite a bit this last year. But I do think he's really tried his ass off to be a leader for this team. Like part of the issue in Indiana, like I think we talked about this last pod we did, like they just have never defined who the best players on the team, even though it is clearly Domas. Like they've never come out and said it. They've never been willing to say it. They never established a hierarchy of who the best player on the team was. And it sounds like such a trivial thing, but I think that's really important. If everybody views themselves as, like the same level of vocal leader, then it's really tough to establish an actual leader. So, but I know, like, I mean, just in watching him and how he's carried himself, he definitely has tried to make himself that. He hates losing, man. Like, he is the guy, like, if they lose, like, he's not going to give you a good I'm just letting you know right now, if they lose a game, he's not going to give you a good answer in media availability. He probably won't give you a good answer in media availability regardless, because he does not really enjoy talking to the media very much. But no, he's a good dude. He's just all about winning. He wants to play ball. I that's part of what's frustrating for me too, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, he's a stat matter. He's this, he's that. I've never seen that. I think he's always out there trying to do what's right for the team to win, for him and his teammates to win. I'm excited for him in Sacramento. I do think it's a really good opportunity for him, and I think, based on some things I've heard, I'm not really too surprised that the team has moved on. I did think that there was if he was going to move on, I thought it was going to be more in the off season, but I'd imagine a lot of things in Indiana have worn on him. So yeah, I'm excited to watch him in Sacramento though, man. I think it's going to be a really good fit for him.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting,
or at least an interesting fit. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how the fit looks, but yeah, I think it could be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we haven't seen. I guess my whole thing is like we haven't seen De'Aaron Fox optimized. We haven't seen him actually get the chance to play with other great players, and I don't know that I view Sabonis as like a great fit or anything like that, but he's easily the best teammate that De'Aaron has ever had. I think that there is potential for them to complement each other very well, and getting other surrounding lengthy defenders is going to be really important that can also space the floor, which I get isn't the easiest mold to go out and obtain, but I think Sacramento has ways to do that. I think that this is going to be interesting, and to kind of go through a little bit of some of the other moves we've seen recently, without going too in depth and making this more time sensitive, since I'm sure there will be more soon here. Portland did end up trading away CJ McCollum. We'd already seen them trading away Norman Powell as well. Just teams that Sacramento's rubbing shoulders with, chasing this 10 spot, and actually sent CJ to the New Orleans Pelicans. So that's a team that is doing a similar thing to Sacramento here and really pushing for that last play-in spot, which is hilarious because 3 years ago or however long everybody was talking about being in the 8 seed perpetually was just a horrible situation to be in, and now everybody's chasing the 10 spot because of this play-in was existed. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be New Orleans and Sacramento fighting for this 10 spot is pretty much what it feels like here. And I'd be shocked if there wasn't more moves from Sacramento. You have any questions for me, Mark? I know I do have picked your brain a bunch. So,
number one, how are you feeling about not even basketball wise, but just, I mean, I know you and Tyrese had some budding chemistry too. So how are you feeling with him getting moved, man? I was really enjoying catching up on everything from pressers every time that you got to talk with him.
Yeah, he told me yesterday when he was walking away that we were going to play 2K over the break. I'm so heartbroken. I don't even want to do it anymore.
Hey, man, you'll have to hold it against him if he doesn't actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It was definitely crazy. I think especially as the guy that like you thought was going to be around and the one that was talking
Yeah.
about changing the culture, like not letting it change him. Instead, he was like, I don't know how long it'll take, but I'll be here and we're going to figure it out. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just crazy. Like when the season has been so dark and underwhelming from not reaching expectations, especially since there were, I think, larger expectations this year compared to last. Really shipping off what was maybe the lone bright spot is just a lot to take in. But I also know that I'm going to love Sabonis
Yeah.
as a player. So, yeah, I mean, I think emotionally it's just like, wow, you're really going to move on from the one bright spot of the future. And I think that, like what you pointed out, of Tyrese having this ridiculous progression year after year, what you saw year one at Iowa State to his sophomore year, where he ended up being a lottery pick, even jumps in self-creation from year one to year two, the amount of responsibility he's been able to have on his shoulders this year as a primary option, even though I don't know that that is necessarily the most ideal thing, but for him to be able to do that, handle getting doubled in hedges and things like this, a thing that I just didn't think he would be able to do with his handle or physicality or things like this. Like I really don't know what the ceiling of Tyrese is. So which yeah, maybe I'm a little too far there, but he's the bright spot of all the on court things this year and all the off court situations as well. So it's a whole little shakeup for sure. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just ranted there,
No,
but
you're good, man. Most definitely. I'm trying to think. Last thing that I want to hit on too. I mean,
I feel bad Ty has to stay with Buddy. By the way, I think that's kind of funny in this.
oh, do they not like each other?
I don't think they dislike each other, but I
Yeah.
don't think that anybody. I wouldn't think that anybody on Sacramento's roster is thinking the most fondly of Buddy. Like I
Yeah.
think on court they all get along. Like they have their whole bow 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 thing, right?
Yeah.
That is kind of Buddy's joke, and Tyrese is like following along with all the time. I don't think there's any bad issues between the two as people or anything. I think that Buddy's just been a really frustrating player that I think I would imagine most people kind of wanted to no longer be a part of. But, a lot of it had to do with wanting to be out of Sacramento, so maybe Buddy's different as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm interested to see. Because I do. I would imagine that it's not going to be easy to move Buddy again. And honestly, the Pacers kind of need him. Like they need shooting. Like they cannot afford to be worse, to have an even worse shooting roster than they did coming into today. So I'm interested to see how that works and how he and Rick Carlisle get along. Because that's always exciting to figure out what that's going to look like. But
Yeah. I'm
I
going to have to
mean,
have PD Webb on to preview the 2027 draft.
yeah. Talk about second rounders. I don't know, man. I guess my thing with Sacramento, just finishing off on this, a lot of this to me is like I don't have a firm this was good or this was bad until a couple months from now. Like I need to see what happens in the offseason. I need to see if they like I still think they should move Harrison. Like I still think that they should be moving Rashawn. Like they need to get the most value that they can because even though Domas is an established all-star and like a really good player right now, their window is not. I mean, no. Like they cannot act like I think trying to gun for the 10 seed right now would be a mistake. My hope is like they view this as being better prepared for a better version of not but hopefully not a version of this team at all, but just a better team next year, in what they can do with and maybe they view Domas and Fox fitting together better, but it is
I think of
definitely
Chicago. I think of Chicago,
yeah.
where they made that Vucevic trade, and I think we've kind of heard the Vucevic trade thrown around a lot as a baseline for what the potential Sabonis deal would be. And
Yeah.
obviously they have their differences, but the fact that Sacramento still has all their firsts that they're working with, and what I think are valuable, substantial deals for any salary matching in Harrison Barnes and Rashawn Holmes, like I still think there's a lot more maneuvering that they can do here. They still can get close to, if not max cap space this offseason, if that's what they want to do, even though there's no like names that blow you away this offseason or anything. I don't know if they'd throw a bunch of money at like Miles Bridges in restricted free agency or what that could look like, for example. But I think that, this is the beginning of a new look where it's like, okay, clearly you're going all in. Then let's fully do this thing.
Yeah, I agree because I think the other thing where I'm at, I mean, I guess part of this is a vote of confidence for Davion Mitchell. Like, I mean, I think it would be a mistake to take him out of the starting lineup even after Fox comes back. Somebody brought up a really good point to me a couple days ago because I'm writing something on Davion right now. I'm just on a King's kick, I guess, but because he's been playing, I mean, he's been really balling out, and like the defense has even been better, partially because of him. Like what he's been doing at the point of attack the last 2 weeks has been like just incredible stuff. Like it's the kind of shit I've wanted to see in Sacramento for a while. Um, Again, I do question, buying into Davion over Haliburton, but the front office wants to make their bed with that, so I don't think they can move him back to the bench. But the point I was going to bring up, like, he's very much a rhythm player, like, and I think we've seen that with him having issues coming off the bench and scoring. Like, he's had moments where if he can cook for like 8 to 10 minutes, like he can look really good, and he's able to get into what he needs because the pull up is so important for him. Um, and that's what allows him to establish a lot of his pacing in the half court. But if he doesn't have the time to do that, he can really struggle to get going offensively. He's really not like he can be an okay catch and shoot guy, but it's like, okay, can you get him going first? Can you get him settled in? I mean, that's something he's gonna have to work through and get better at. But I do think him being in the starting lineup and figuring that out is gonna be important. And I've been, I mean, I have been really impressed with him.
He does have to become a pretty good catch and shoot 3-point shooter.
Yeah,
if it's going to be Fox,
especially like if it's going to make sense with him with Fox for sure. But I mean, he's a guy I'm very excited about him playing alongside Domas. Like I think what they could do together in pick and roll could be nice because I've been, I would say I've been like a little bit more impressed with Davion's passing than I thought coming into the year. Like especially over this last stretch, I think he's been making some more advanced, quicker reads than I was expecting. I mean, he's going to have to figure out like actual counters at the rim, but like he's just getting people with the hesitation dribble. And it's like I tweeted this out. Like it's hard to even call it a hesitation dribble because he does it so fucking fast. But like, I mean, he totally dusted Steph Curry that other night. And I don't know. You see stuff with him that's really encouraging. And again, like it's all in a vacuum, but you can still make out a lot with this team that's interesting, but they really have to hit it with the draft, which is why I just do not want to see them go for the 10 seed. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, this first round pick in the next draft is going to be really interesting. It wouldn't surprise me to see it moved even before this deadline, before whenever you're listening to this episode, or with some notable protections, top 4, top 6, top 8 sort of thing. Or if it's held on and all of a sudden you're adding a AJ Griffin or something like this, like, yeah, I think that next year is where it gets really interesting for Sacramento kind of piecing this all together. And right now, a lot of this year is going to be figuring out how Fox and Sabonis work alongside one another. And, getting them a little bit more comfortable. The coaching situation is going to be interesting going into next year. That is an interesting asterisk on here that I'll probably do some digging into today when I go to the first of that back-to-back against Minnesota. Apparently the incentives with Gentry because if he reaches certain thresholds he can keep the job. We don't know exactly, but it's assumed that has to do with postseason appearance, and acquiring Sabonis helps with that.
Man, I hate that so much. Like, that's part of the problem. I mean, exactly. Like, I don't mean to keep elongating this, but that's like exactly. That's just part of the problem with this organization, man. Like, they have never just actually taken the opportunity to be bad, even though they have forced themselves into being bad, and like that is just the worst possible spot to be in. And man, we'll see though.
They're good now, Mark. They're good now, Mark.
Just this move makes them perfect. That's all they needed.
Yeah,
absolved of all sins whatsoever. No, not even close.
No, it'll be interesting for sure to see how this continues to break down these next couple of days. Sure, there'll be more moves. Anybody that hasn't checked out Mark's piece for SB Nation on the Kings, still totally relevant with all the moves that have been going on. So definitely take a peek at that. I know you have it up on your Twitter and also obviously on SB Nation. And the Twitter's at MSchindlerNBA. Work for Basketball News, Fear the Sword, Indie Cornrows. What else am I missing, Mark? You got a lot going on, man. Can't say enough about your work,
I'm
by the
kind of
way.
all over the place. I do a draft podcast called Tag the Roll with my good friend Jake Rosen, who's also a scout. Mostly just looking at a lot of player development and how guys are improving. So, but yes, keeping up with everything I do, all things basketball. You can find me on Twitter. Is the best place to find me. And I just appreciate you having me on, man. This was a blast.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, man. Quick reaction to this, and anybody unaware, obviously Mark does great work that I know myself and a lot of other guys at the Kings Herald think really highly of. So obviously check out everything that Mark is putting out. And speaking of the Kings Herald, take a look at their site. I'm sure they're going to have great coverage of this, which is myself included, and whatever further trades that we see, probably crying over Tyrese a little bit, understandably. So take a look at the site and peek at the Patreon to support local independent Kings coverage. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Kings Pulse podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. And hear from us again in the next couple of days.